Good afternoon everybody, and welcome to Rhyme of the Times for the week ending 24th of June 2023. A submersible exploded. Putin by enemies is goaded and his authority is eroded. The Boris brand is corroded as the Commons has him offloaded. This week was like looking for a needle in the hay, or whatever the phrase is that's used to say. The chance of a successful search is small. In fact, finding what's wanted has no chance at all. And what exactly was it that was being searched for? A submersible that was heading to the ocean floor. The Titan, which, it transpired, was fatally flawed, had a diving guru and 3 rich guys on board. 19-year-old Suleiman Dawood took the last seat, joining his dad for a tragic Father's Day treat. 5 men in all going to view the Titanic, 600k from Newfoundland in the Atlantic. When alarm bells rang, the whole world got engaged. The race against time filled every newspaper page. And the community of explorers all did their bit. From around the world they offered bits of kit. But it turned out that for 4 whole days they had all been on a wild goose chase. On Sunday, less than 2 hours since the quest began, a massive implosion had demolished the plan. The pressure was too much for the Titan, it seems. The submersible had been blown to smithereens. It was Thursday when, from the depths of the sea, came news of the sightings of a field of debris, just 1,600 feet from the Titanic itself, that had rested there since 1912. The shunning of wise advice killed many souls then. A similar attitude has now killed 5 more men. And after telling the families of those departed, the investigation and questions quickly started. Ocean Gate, who built and operated the Titan, felt innovation suffered when rules were tightened. They didn't like words like certificate or regulate, and so we now have the scandal of Ocean Gate. But we can't quiz Ocean Gate CEO Stockton Rush. He was one of the 5 in the submersible crush. From the terror of the North Atlantic Ocean to the terror of the brutal Yevgeny Prigozhin. For weeks it had seemed like Wagner's chief goon thought Putin was drinking at the Last Chance saloon. Wagner and the Russian army at loggerheads, quarrels that Putin just could not put to bed. The motherland in desperate need of succour, but in the hands of a bunch of mother suckers. So the head of the Wagner private fighting force, that is actually part of Putin's war machine of course, on Friday seemed to have reached the end of his tether and marched his men to Rostov-on-Don together. With some nerve they took over Russia's nerve centre. It seemed the Russian army was pleased to surrender. Prigozhin had apparently achieved his goal. Russia's war effort was now under his control. Then we found that he actually wanted much more, and his army started heading up Russia's M4. Did he want to bring the Russian president down, or just see his neatly pressed trousers turn brown? The latter he had achieved with no difficulty, going by Putin's address on Russian TV. His paranoid alternative worldview was espoused from the verbal diarrhea spewing from his mouth. The contorted face and the nonsense he spoke confirmed him as an international joke. And as Prigozhin's thugs moved rapidly north, they finally met some Russian resistant force. It seemed the maggots had started eating each other. Mother Russia must have hurt seeing brother kill brother. son-consuming father, dad-devouring son, as Putin's tough guy image was being unspun. Then suddenly, with Saturday evening beckoning and Muscovites preparing for days of reckoning, the Wagner dogs were called off, back on their leads, as this coup attempt appeared to quickly recede. And Prigozhin took an off-ramp to Belarus, and we wonder if it was all just a mega ruse. On Monday, Alexei Navalny had been in court. He had clearly been occupying Putin's thoughts. Over 6,000 papers of purported evidence to prove Navalny doesn't like the president. The Kremlin coward is clearly terrified, so wants his tormentor to spend his whole life inside. Finally, to a handful of British headlines, and Boris's political exit being signed. From the 2019 landslide, it's odd to see the end come so quickly to Johnson's odyssey. His ability to woo voters was quite unrivalled. From unrivalled, it unravelled into mere survival. Political spin had many Brexiteers spun, believing Brexit had finally been done. A brave new world, many were believing it. That bureaucratic monolith, we were at last leaving it. But the oven-ready deal was undercooked. Many awkward details had been overlooked. And then came COVID and that Partygate stuff, and now even most Tories have had enough. So on Monday, Johnson was finally shown the door by 7 votes to 354. The Privileges Committee's recommendations had received massive support and commendations. Elsewhere, it seems this summer, strike action will rule on the railways, hospitals and in the schools. With interest rates up and inflation still sticky and the UK economy still somewhat dicky, the cost of living for many Brits is still very tricky.